Hi YouTube, this is Jack, and we need to talk about something very important. Basically, the fall of the West. That sounds very dramatic, I know, but it happens to be the truth. The liberal forces against us, and I include the Obamas, the Obamaites, the Clintonians, the CIA, the deep state, the Trudeauites, all the forces in Europe, um, they are actually conspiring to destroy the West and Western ideals in general. That, again, sounds very melodramatic, but it is sadly the truth. And unless we do something about it, the West will fall. Things like freedom of speech, individualism, women's rights, gay rights, freedom of thought and expression, uh, democracy, true democracy, will dissolve. And it is incumbent upon us, thinking, rational, non brainwashed people, to do something about it. And so I'm starting this YouTube channel in an attempt to get the word out and to add my voice to the movement that it was in some ways started by Trump. Now, of course, there has been a libertarian, an intelligent libertarian movement that has existed for a long time, but it has really gained steam with Trump. Not that he is technically a libertarian, but he's not technically anything else either, which is why so many of all sides support him. If we don't make it through this pass, we won't make it at all. The West will fall. Soros, the Rothschilds, all the enemies of freedom will prevail. That is a real thing that is going on in our world right now. We have over the top, cartoonish villains that wouldn't be plausible in a James Bond movie that are actually conspiring to destroy us and end our way of life. Now, the West traditionally has been imperialistic and in promoting our culture and our way of life throughout the world, for good or ill. In many of these places that we have now withdrawn from, they will tell you that their best days were under British hegemony or American. Now, I'm not promoting imperialism, but I am promoting the culture of the West as it has traditionally existed. And I encourage you to do the same. The West is worth saving. The West is worth fighting for. This is your call to arms. Metaphorical arms, but arms nonetheless. We need to step up while we have this chance and do something. And this chance will end. There is a window of opportunity that we have because of Trump. And when his presidency ends, if we have not achieved some significant strides toward victory, by that time, the window may very well shut. And the West will be doomed. So please, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, engage on social media. When you see idiots spouting nonsense on social media, as they do nonstop, engage with them. It's painful and it's annoying, but it's the only way to disseminate some actual truth to their side. It won't be easy because they are utterly brainwashed. They cannot think for themselves. They cannot form coherent arguments or thoughts. It is sad. They are sheep. The herders are true enemies, and we must bring them down. Twitter, the fucking CIA. The forces against us are legion. They are very powerful, and they are after us. They are taking down our troops one by one. Flynn, Milo, defunding InfoWars, going after targets on the conservative or independent side, strategically and intelligently. One of the most intelligent things they're able to do is to tear down members of our side. They do that ruthlessly and zealously. And zeal is a big part of the problem. They are religious in their dogma toward the ideals of the left. And I say the left, not liberalism, because they are not strictly liberal anymore. I am a classical liberal, as are many of you. We believe in individualism, freedom of thought and expression, freedom of speech. And many people on the so-called right actually support women's rights and gay rights. The liberals, the so-called liberals, the leftists, do not. They actually support Islam. Islam does not support women's rights or gay rights. They oppress women viciously and horribly. They do not support gay rights. They imprison gays or execute gays. Sometimes they throw them off roofs. Islam is not a friend to the ideals of liberalism. Islam is an enemy of the ideals of liberalism. At least Islam as it currently exists. Historically, Islam has not always been as it looks today. In times past, Muslims were well-regarded astronomers and mathematicians. They developed algebra. They studied the stars. They were cultured and intelligent and enlightened people, many of them. And their culture generally trended in that direction. Until a few centuries ago, a fundamentalist wave of Islam came to the fore and has taken them over. They intentionally devolved as a culture because mathematical symbols were seen as symbols of the devil. So progress was halted and reduced. And that is just the way it was, sadly. And so because of that fundamentalism, Islam devolved and stagnated at that devolved level. And so it has continued to the present day. And the liberals, the so-called liberals, the leftists, which is what they really are, they are no longer liberals, they are actual leftists, which has left true liberalism behind. So the leftist, as we should call them, the leftist enemy is how I think of them. The leftist enemy, which embraces groupthink, totalitarianism, the suppression of free speech, they have conspired, or at least sided, with Islam. They promote and support Islam. The Women's March, they were chanting Islamic prayers. The Oscars, they were quoting the Quran incorrectly, etc. They actively promote Islam and encourage America in the West in general to embrace Muslims and to invite them in, which has led to mass upheaval, rape and death and other crimes in Europe, and will doubtlessly happen in America and Canada. Especially if Trudeau has his way in Canada and is able to actually suppress free speech past his Islamophobia bill, which I pray does not come to pass. And I will do another segment on that at some point. But At any rate, the left has embraced Islam and thus has abandoned true liberalism. They no longer support women's rights or gay rights or freedom of speech if they, within the same breath, can support Islam. Because Islam does not support these things. It can be argued whether the left supports freedom of speech. They riot when speakers who don't agree with them are giving speeches. They pass bills to limit what people can say. See the bill in Canada and other laws in Sweden and throughout Europe. You cannot speak ill against the refugees, for example. You cannot even, police officers can't disclose the ethnicities of people that commit crimes because that would reflect poorly on the refugee policies, etc. All of which is to say that the left is no longer an ally of freedom or liberalism. All true liberals should abandon the left because the left has abandoned you. Liberals should embrace libertarianism, whatever, but they should abandon the Democratic Party, which is mired in corruption and collusion with the media, with the CIA, with various apparatuses to limit your freedom of thought and speech and expression. The CIA under Obama actually created a meme warfare division, which as far as I know still exists, and they were actively disseminating, as far as we know, memes to advance their agendas. What are their agendas? Well, Obama was raising their budget by billions of dollars. He very much loved the CIA and was using them to spy on his supposed enemies, truly America's allies in Europe, and very likely using the CIA to actually tamper with the elections in Europe and blaming Russia for it. They collected evidence from our European allies and then pretended that it was the Russians hacking the elections to sway the elections of Europe in favor of the globalists, which is what the CIA has become, the left arm of the globalists. And I mean left as in the unsavory arm of the globalists, the leftist enemy. We can infer that the CIA is leftist and serves their purposes, and thus so would their memes. Does that mean they were sending out memes opposing Trump during the campaign? Were they partially responsible for the leftist furor against Trump? Are they responsible for the Hitler memes and so on? Possibly. We don't know. All is conjecture. We don't know what their memes were for, if they were employed against America or abroad. They were bugging Samsung TVs, smartphones. Smartphones could have been used against terrorists and others. Were Samsung TVs used against terrorists? Were they bugging Samsung TVs because of terrorism? Or were they using Samsung TVs to monitor people in the United States of America? If, in fact, they were, then it would follow that they were also employing other stratagems against U.S. citizens, very possibly including memes. Who else would be so susceptible to meme warfare? Nobody in the world would be more susceptible to meme warfare than Americans. It makes sense. The CIA was very likely engaged in brainwashing, which is what meme warfare is. They were very likely engaged in brainwashing Americans for the globalists. Think about that. The CIA is brainwashing Americans. That makes sense. That partially explains the polarization that we're seeing in America. not just polarization. Polarization really requires two sides. The right has remained largely consistent. If anything, it's pulled more toward the center, especially under Trump. The left has gone way out left. Is this because of tampering from the CIA or other leftist apparatuses? We can't know. Again, that's conjecture. But that is something to bear in mind. Those are the sorts of forces that are conspiring against us. We must be aware of that. We must spread the word of that. You cannot trust anything that you see on social media. Except me. That is why YouTube is so important. Because it is a way for other voices to be heard over the din, the largely false din perpetrated by the leftists, the paid-for liberal, so-called liberal shills, the machinations of things like the CIA. They are driving a certain narrative, and we must counter that narrative however possible, as loud as possible. Hillary would have been their puppet, their stooge. The most corrupt politician in U.S. history. She would have been a disaster, and she would have very likely spelled the end of the West. Thank the gods she is not our president. And Trump is, and so we have this opportunity to change things, to open that window wider, to save the West. And so I will be doing some videos here and there, and I'll be talking about whatever I want to talk about. Politics, movies, popular culture, whatever I'm in the mood to talk about that day. But the emphasis will largely be on politics and on saving the West, which is what we all need to do, which is what we all need to embrace. Please click like and subscribe. Tell your friends about this channel. I will be posting on YouTube regularly. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.